Right, I'll just welcome everybody as we have some more joining us. This is our second to last session of the year for our research coordinator enrichment series. We're doing a ancillary services, as you know, you all signed up, BMI and language resources, and then next month we're doing kind of a part 2 ancillary services and covering a few additional topics. So you can sign up if you have this. That register link is hyperlinked in the presentation, but it also just leads to our Academy page, which I'm sure you all have visited to register for this course and or previous ones. So welcome everybody. Today we have Brad Taylor, our Chief Research Informatics Officer with CTSI, who will be covering biomedical informatics or BMI. And then we have Ray Ann Peterson, who's Program Manager at the CTSI HRU, and will be covering the language resources today. And I will pass it over to Brad.
Okay, welcome everybody. If there's any questions throughout my presentation or discussion, please let's speak up. And I think we're also monitoring chat if somebody would rather prefer to just throw something in chat. Oh, there we go.
One manual, and then it should work fine on the,
Okay, cool.
the arrows now.
So I'm going to be covering or discussing the Center for Biomedical Informatics, or CBMI. And you'll see this kind of a wheel on the screen at the moment. And these are some of the networks that you may hear about in the future, if you've not already engaged in them, that we are participating in and support from an informatics perspective. And I'll get into some details on what those are as I go throughout the presentation. But high level, we engage in a number of different networks to facilitate big data and real world evidence across broad networks that include anything from 14 different sites to international collaborations as well. All right. There's a lot of words. Let's read this by, verbatim. No, I'm not going to do that. So what is the informatics core within the CTSI? We play a critical role in helping facilitate the use of data, either from cohort characterization and discovery to supporting clinical trials. And we've supported a number of different initiatives within our team to support those things. And the bullets are the ones that I kind of want to highlight are the CRDW, the Clinical Research Data Warehouse. If you've not heard about the CRDW, you will throughout the rest of this presentation because everything's built off of it. And it supports a number of different things like common data models like OMOP and Hornet 92B2. We link that CRDW to a number of different sources of truth, like the EHR within our adult and pediatric systems, as well as the biospecimen bank, clinical trials management system, Encore. We have connectivity to external clinical genomics testing labs, the Nature Tumor Registry, just to name a couple. There's a variety of different things that we connect as well. We use tools supported both locally as well as in a cloud fashion. Locally, we have something called I2B2 for doing inclusion-exclusion criteria on a study or a clinical trial. So you can identify how many patients might be available for a particular study. And we also have Trinetics, which is a very nice user-friendly tool that engages both nationally as well as with international participation. So that's really, truly big data. We have data collection systems like REDCap or customized tools that we've created. We have an image de-identification service center for clinical trials or sponsored studies. Much of that held in the cancer center space. Those trials require images to be de-identified for inclusion of patients in a study. So we have a service center supporting that, and obviously training and all the tools that we have available as well. Again, pretty busy slide, but I'm going to walk through at a really high level. On the far left-hand side, you'll see the kind of orangey boxes. Those are those data sources that we aggregate together. So I talked about a couple of those things like Encore, the Epic Medical Record System, some external genomics labs. I'm not sure if the mouse shows up. Let me do this. No, it does not. External genomics labs that we bring in. We also geocode our data warehouse on a monthly basis, and we tie those to some social determinants of health measures like ADI or Area Deprivation Index or the RUCA codes, the Rural Urban Codes. All of that gets harmonized into that center single box, which is the CTSI CRDW or Clinical Research Data Warehouse. From that, then we build off and make available all of the tools that I talked about, like the PCORNet Common Data Model, the OMOP Common Data Model, I2B2, our Honest Broker System, Trinetics, and then I have to look down here a little bit. Additional things that are circled in red in that third box is Immerse, which allows you the ability to be able to search through notes, unstructured clinical documentation. With IRB approval, you can search through notes at scale. And then for those budding data scientists, we have Jupyter Lab that's connected to our data warehouse in support of machine learning and artificial intelligence. On the right-hand side is the automated pathways that we have available, just kind of looking at volumes of people and studies that are using the extraction of that data. Quite robust, if you will.
You want there is a laser function. You want to point it?
No, I'm not gonna do that. Okay, again, lots of stuff on the slide. I've provided some links that you can look at as well. I talked a little bit about geocoding on a monthly basis and the connectivity to social determinants of health. So starting on the kind of 1 o'clock side of things, it's where we have the area deprivation index that's hosted by the University of Wisconsin-Madison, that we then connect to the rest of the phenotypic information that we have available that's harmonized and ontologized in the data warehouse, and provide that as pathways to access those social SDOH elements, either de-identified or identified depending upon regulatory oversight. And that's something that we do on a regular basis, and we use the geocoding to support a number of other projects and initiatives as well.
Quick question on that.
Yeah.
Our studies that we work on, we work a lot with the ADI and different social determinants of health. And
Yeah.
I've noticed when downloading some of that data from Honest Broker, ADI tends to have quite a bit of missingness. Like there's always the addresses, which is geocoded from, but the ADI itself doesn't tend to be there. And I was just wondering why.
That's a very good question and something that I'd have to dig into. I don't have the answer
Okay,
on the
got
top of my head. But Chris, who's still online, can you make a note that we talk with Alex about that, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right. We also in the last year launched a page on InfoScope. So if you go to InfoScope and you search for CRDW, you'll see on the left-hand side that the page that'll appear. And we've created some dashboards both for the adult and the pediatric side to show kind of volumes of data that are available in the different domains, like allergies, biospecimens, diagnosis, imaging, immunizations, et cetera. I circled a couple of things, and boy, this is really small. I need new glasses. Circled a couple of things that I've already kind of started to talk about is the encounter notes, genomics, and as well as the NACER tumor registry. So I didn't talk about the NACER tumor registry yet, but that's another source of truth that we have connected to the rest of our phenotypic information in the medical record. And you'll notice that some of these dates are interesting because they're some of them are a little older. This slide deck or this snapshot is a little bit older, but the NACER tumor registry is a little bit aged. So if you're using that as a data source, be careful. They're about 6 to 12 plus months behind in curation. So if you need something that's very current, the NACER tumor registry probably isn't the right source of truth for that. So just be careful about it, understanding the longitudinal nature of the data, the currency of that data, and how often it's being refreshed. So just be careful. It's a good source of information, but if you're looking for something in the last couple of months, probably not the right place to be looking at. Okay. And I just put some examples of these dashboards that are readily available on InfoScope today. So as long as you have access to the network, either through VPN or on site, you can get to InfoScope and look this up and look at these dashboards and see what the currency of these are. And I believe we're refreshing this on a weekly basis like we do with the rest of the warehouse. So it's not an immediate return. It's about a week delay. But it's pretty accurate with regards to the counts. And this just gives you a sense of demographics, how many patients that we have. This is looking at Freighter only. So we have 2.16 million. Vital status, alive versus no longer alive. The breakdown of gender, race, ethnicity, chronological age. Sorry, I can't speak this morning or this early afternoon. And then we also have the access to the research contact preference. So we actually have, looking at this right, 9,000 people that are available to contact for research purposes. Now, we probably want to drill down on comorbidities to understand or understand what kind of research they're interested in participating in, but that's a next level engagement. So as we're looking for patients who participate in studies, this is a good place to go as well.
And for these dashboards, are you able to enter like inclusion, exclusion, or is it just like?
These are pure snapshots. If you want to get to inclusion, exclusion, now you're going to need to use I2B2 Trinetics, one of the
Okay.
other tools that
Got
we've got available. This is purely looking at our gross patient population before the inclusion, exclusion. Again, we collect social determinants of health in the medical record. And so we geocode and we connect to ADI and RUCA externally, but there's also stuff being collected in Epic. And this gives you a sense of what types of elements and the volumes of elements and the longitudinal nature of those things being collected. I'll point out the big one here, the PHQ-9 depression scale. So this is really important for certain studies to understand that depression scale and whether there should be included or not. But we also cover alcohol, financial, food, housing, etc. So those things that are already being collected in the medical record, we now can make sure that we can connect to the rest of the patient's phenotype and use those things where required for inclusion, exclusion on studies. Again, genomics is that external thing. So genomics is in kind of an interesting thing, right? So it's a lab that can be taken. So take a swab or we take blood and we send it off to a lab that then does whole genome, whole exome, gene panels, single gene analysis. And those results are scattered and they're returned to the medical record today because we don't have currently don't have implemented the Epic Genomics module that will facilitate that. We're working on that. It looks like first, second quarter of 2026, that'll be live in Epic. But at least on the Freighter side, but the data prior to that, we've experienced a large number of investigators wanting to get some of those raw files, not just the clinical reports, but the raw BAM, BCF, FASTQ files for doing tertiary analysis. So we joined forces and partnered with a number of labs. Foundation, Tempest Garden, Ambry, and Vitae are shown here. But probably the three biggest ones, and actually we're not showing it here, but Caris should also be on this list. Foundation, Tempest, and Caris are probably our biggest labs that we're sending out for external gene panels. And there's some initiatives underway that might narrow that scope to one of those labs being our preferred vendor. I'm not going to say who because it's not been done yet. In progress, but we do have the raw files for those three vendors. So those bioinformaticists that want to do tertiary analysis, we have that data available for them and support a number of people on campus for that. Imaging, we want to know what kind of imaging orders, and then that ties back to, do you have access to the actual images that you can then de-identify for a protocol or a study? So you can see we've been tracking imaging since, well, 2005 is when we started collecting that in the medical record, at least the current EMR. And you can see over time that that's been growing and growing and growing. Beware, this snapshot was done earlier this year. That's why it's only showing 330,000. It should be much higher than that. And if you went to the live dashboard, it would probably show that. Encounter notes. One thing that's really a challenge is taking a look at those encounter notes that are collected for an in-person visit, if you will. And then, and specifically in the cancer space for understanding staging, et cetera, for cancer or for other diseases. So I said in one of the earlier slides that we've launched a tool called Immerse for being able to search through those in a natural Google-like interface to look for those patients with certain criteria where data is collected in the notes only. And then you can tie that with those discrete elements that we have in I2B2 and Trinetics to round out that inclusion exclusion criteria. And again, this just is showing some volume of notes. Looks like we currently have around 201 million curated notes that are available through that tool set. And that again continues to grow. 2025 was an earlier snapshot, so not representative of what it is today, the 23rd of October. Okay. Very busy slide, but this gives you a sense of the pathways for accessing the data. So you can see we've got swim lanes kind of divided out across the organization. And so this is for access for data for research purposes, not for clinical, not for QA, QI in the clinical space, but purely for research studies. Where you start in the upper left-hand corner of that box. So start here. And that is actually an intake form that we have within the CTSI that we then determine, do we have within the warehouse and CBMI access to the data that you need for your study? Or do we need to engage other partners on campus like enterprise analytics, or do we need to get approval from OCRIC, et cetera? And this is the pathways for getting that data and delivering that data, where we have an audit trail from the ask all the way through the deliver and who touched that to be able to deliver that data for your study. I'll test you on this later. Kidding. No, we're not going to do that. But again, just since we've got a good sense of what this looks like, and we actually need to modify this moving forward, because one of the new exciting things that I'm not talking about today because it's not available yet is the rollout of Cosmos. Epic Cosmos will be rolling out again, looks like first quarter 2026. We will be the intake house for that, and we will be able to get you access granted to the Cosmos tool set, along with the appropriate vetting of city and human subjects research training before you are granted access. So this is the overall view, and we'll be adding Cosmos as kind of another step for the pathways for research data as well. So I talk a lot about the data. Now, what do we do as a team? So CBMI is a Center for Biomedical Informatics, which has several different components. Research Informatics, which is kind of the consulting arm of things. And that's Chris Osinski, who's also on the call. We have Research Data Engineering. So how do we formulate the ETL and transformation processes to get this into a harmonized, ontologized system that'll come out of Research Data Engineering? And we also have a Research Software Engineering group as well that will do things like the image de-identification. They built the software to be able to do that. They also support the faculty collaboration database was built out of my group as well. So another custom solutions would be built within the research software engineering space. But then we also support a number of different studies and initiatives across campus. So here's where delivery and support come into play. Far left, we support a number of registries like MPOG, ASH network. We do the sickle cell and the multiple myeloma registries. We are involved and engaged in a number of different studies through PCORNet. There's kind of two different arms to PCORNet. You'll see one is yellow on the screen. We're a full member of the blue one, which is the GPC, or Greater Plains Collaborative. And actually, I'm an MPI. We're not only a site, I'm an MPI on the network for GPC. And then on the yellow one that's listed there is PEDSNet. We participate in a number of studies through PEDSNet, but we are not a formal member of PEDSNet. We're waiting for Children's to decide whether they want to continue moving forward with that or not. CTSAs, we have a number of studies there. NIH, Trinetics for a number of clinical trials as well. I talk a little bit further about that in a moment. And then department support. So cardiology, radiology, anesthesiology, neurosurgery, pediatrics, cancer center, and otolaryngology. We support a number of different initiatives in each of those departments. I'm going to point out under the cancer center, the ICDR, the Integrated Cancer Data Repository, that's being hosted through the GeoShared resource within the cancer center. The CTSI and the GeoShared resources joined forces a year and a half, 2 years ago to create this integrated cancer data repository, which is looking at those very specific phenotypes in the cancer space. Again, much of that is through genomics and through NLP within the unstructured clinical documentation. And then on the far right-hand side, we have strategic hub initiatives. We are working with several partners in the state of Wisconsin, including UW-Madison, Aurora, Marshfield, to create a statewide data repository. So that's the Wisconsin Health Data Hub. We're in the early stages of that right now. We've got a pilot set up. I'm hoping that early in 2026, maybe second quarter, we'll have that fully implemented and being able to look across the state for our patient population as well. And we're also engaged, having discussions with ThedaCare to start including their data in our warehouse as well. So now we have basically the eastern part of the state covered. And then through Aurora and Madison, we'll have the rest of the state covered. I said a little something about the Greater Plains Collaborative. You can see the heat map. This is where the sites are located. So we have actually 14 academic centers. We've got free access through an I2B2 instance to be able to query all of those sites de-identified. We won't be able to get raw data, but you can get some sense of patient populations for a specific study. And we also do have access through GPC, access to CMS claims data in a secure Snowflake environment. And then on the lower left here is the Enact network, which is similar, but it was focused on CTSA sites. So you see the little dots across the country on that little map. Those are the sites that are engaged in that. I apologize, I don't know the number of sites, CTSA sites. I mean, I think there's 62 of them across the country. I don't know that all of them are engaged, but many of them are. And again, it's another multi-site query tool like I2B2. So if we think about this, we've got I2B2 locally. We've got I2B2 for the GPC network and I2B2 for Enact to be able to do local versus a regional versus national coverage. And then Trinetics would be used to look at international coverage. And this is just the sense of the the Trinetics tool set. Again, another tool for doing inclusion exclusion that has a broader network, including countries in South America, Far East, and Europe. Pretty easy to use. If you are granted access to the CRDW, you will also be granted access to Trinetics, and you can get training on all of these tools as well. I mentioned earlier the Economic Development Award. How am I doing it?
You're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Economic Development Award, which is currently in progress, and this is going to be the Wisconsin Health Data Hub. That's listed under number 1. Number 2 is the CareScan mobile early detection for various diseases. I think breast cancer is the first one we're looking at doing early detection. Mara Lord is the lead for project number 2 within the institution. You know, Mara?
Yeah.
All right, cool. And then Madison is the lead for number 1, but we are a participating site in that. So MCW is involved in these 3 projects. There were 5 projects awarded for this particular Economic Development Award, but we're involved in 3 of them. CBMI is involved in number 1. And then obviously Mara and others on campus are involved in projects 2 and 3.
Sorry, can you tell me a little bit more about the relationship between BioForward and
I'm sorry, say that again?
the relationship between BioForward and this hub? Are they the ones?
So BioForward is a kind of a statewide run agency, if you will, or unit. And so they collected the appropriate people across the state to submit for this Economic Development Award. It went through BioForward. So we had to submit everything to BioForward, who then submitted it to the EDA.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I talked to, and I didn't get into too much detail, but some interesting things that we're working on right now. We've launched this a couple of years ago. Is generative AI is the new hot topic, right? So using LLMs. And so we know that in the cancer space, it's really difficult to do the inclusion exclusion without doing chart reviews, which is extremely time intensive. And so we'd like to be able to say we can screen all of our patients for a study. So we joined forces with an external startup organization called Triomics, and through the CI4CC, or Cancer Informatics for Cancer Centers group, worked with them to develop something we call an Onco LLM. It's an LLM that's trained on our patients' notes in a privacy-preserving way. So behind firewalls, not looking out to the internet. And so we trained this LLM and then created a tool set that sits on top of that for doing clinical trial patient matching. So now we can accurately say that we're screening 100% of our patients across all open studies on our campuses. This has been a pilot rollout. We've got 4 or 5 DOTs or disease-oriented teams that are launched, and we're going to be launching others moving forward. We have some additional training that we need to do for our LLM. But you can see this is an example of that tool set. You see the red arrow where it's pointing to these little tiny numbers. That actually will surface the note, so you can read how that was gauged from the note. So it's really important to make sure that we've got attribution for where does this particular concept get extracted and exposed, and say, yes, we're including or excluding, so we can expose that. And in that particular case, there were 3 notes that had that information. I think some things I really want to get, more slides I've got. I want to make sure that you understand is, since 2015, we've served over 1,500 projects on campus. We have over 828 red cap or custom solution projects for data management and data collection. I talked a little bit about image de-identification, so almost 478 projects that we've done for image de-identification. And then you'll see in the lower left, I talked a little bit about Enact and Cornet and Trinetics and I2B2. N3C, I'm not going to get into at the moment because the contract with Palantir at the NCATS level expired last month, and they're in the process of redoing that. So we're not promoting N3C until that contract is back in place. But we do contribute data to N3C. And on the right-hand side, again, I talked about quite a few of those things around Encore, ADI, RUCA, et cetera. I think one thing that, and again, I can't point to it, but it's on the lower right-hand side, second from the bottom, Social Security Death Master file. Through our engagement with the GPC, we also have access to the Social Security Death Master file, which helps to augment the data warehouse for those patients that are deceased but haven't been noted in the EMR. There is a lag there. And so and people move and maybe we never see them again. So using the SSDMF helps augment and truly understand our patient population and who is with us and who is passed on. How do you get access? Joining the CTSI. It's pretty simple. You go to the CTSI, join, and complete the city training for human subjects research, complete an intake form, tell us what you need access to, we'll guide you, train you, and it's an all-you-can-eat on your own. If you need us to engage in projects, we will gauge that project's effort, and there may be some sort of fee associated with that. But most of the tools I talked about here are self-service. And then we do have an extensive list of resources for reference on the CTSI website. I've got the link in the lower left. Questions? Yeah, good.
Great.
Okay.
Don't worry.
You mentioned the Trinetics and I2B2 both being good tools for the inclusion exclusion. What is just like a brief, the differences, the pros and cons between those two services?
So again, it depends upon what populations you're looking at, right? So we can look at our local population in both the tools. I2B2 is actually more extensive, contains more information than Trinetics does.
Okay.
But Trinetics, on the other hand, is a much more user-friendly tool than I2B2 is. So we really need to know what your use case is to say what is the right tool to use.
Got it.
And then to keep me honest, if Chris is still here, did I misstate anything?
No, you covered everything really well and answered that question well. It's a good question.
Any other questions? Hopefully this was informative. Rayanne, you're up.
And I just want to remind everybody, you can find this presentation in the box through the box link, and all of our past presentations are in there. So a lot of the links that you saw today on the slides, you can follow those pathways. All right. I'm here to speak today about the MCW Research Language Services Core. It's been in function for probably just over a year. But it is a good opportunity for us to share these resources with you in this setting. So my name is Rayanne Peterson. As Sarah mentioned earlier, I work out of the Adult Translational Research Unit, and the Adult Translational Research Unit works to give administrative support for this Research Language Services Core. So as the name suggests, the Research Language Services Core works to connect our research staff with both written and verbal translation. So what we'll see is both interpretive and written translational services available to our research teams. And what we do is we utilize, in the majority of these cases, third-party vendor language line services. So they offer on-demand audio and video interpretation and written translation in over 240 languages, including sign language. As research staff, you understand the importance of the participants within our programs, within our studies. And so the core really works hard to promote this inclusivity and diversity in clinical research. We want to improve the underrepresented populations and encourage participation in clinical trials across the board for all of the participants or eligible participants in our studies. And most importantly, really to maintain the integrity of research and wanting to make sure that that information that you're portraying to your participants is coming through clearly in their native language. And we're also considering those cultural nuances that may get lost in translation if we aren't using appropriate staff or appropriate wording. So the written translation services portion of this is a pretty straightforward process. I don't know if any of our people on the call or in the room have utilized this version of translation services before. But what happens is you reach out to me directly even and just send over that document that you're looking to have translated. This could be an ICF form, it could be a survey of any of your research documents. I've then presented to submit it through a portal to our contacts with language line services, and they respond back with a quote for you. So you'll have a full opportunity to review what they are looking at, the pricing associated with it, before moving forward with the full translation. What's great about this and the work that we've put into building this core up is that we've negotiated some pricing, which will be a benefit to your study teams as well. So we'll have pricing that ranges between 4 cents to 16 cents a word, depending on whether that's what they call new text versus a repetition within your document. And even greater for a majority of our translations are Spanish translations. The MCW Department of Research, Office of Research has worked with us to translate the boilerplate consent templates into Spanish already. And so these are actually now considered zero charge for those translations. So you're having a majority of your consent form, a majority of your document is going to be then under this $0 per word translation cost. And it will only be those items that are unique to your project, unique to your specific documents that are then charged at the dollar amount rate. And again, as I said, the free written translation quote is just part of this deal. So if you are even just curious to see at the start of a study, like how much would this cost to translate? Is this something within our budget? I give the example there in that photo of what a portion of that quote document that is returned to you looks like. This one encompassed a large number of documents, so don't get scared by that cost. But this was quite a few documents throughout the course of the study that were being translated. For interpretive services, Language Line again assists us with this. Many of your study teams most likely, or it's common to have multilingual staff members within our institution. But we do want to remember that when talking about consents, when speaking about specific medical coverage and issues and expectations for the course of the study, we want to be very clear in those conversations. And so having that certified interpreter is really key. And so with Language Line, we offer both audio and video options for interpretation. So you is really as easy as calling a number. You'll enter in the code that we've been given for our site. We ask some general questions just to be able to identify that protocol. It may ask for the project number, maybe the coordinator name or PI name. Again, that is just to attribute it back to the specific study that is using the service. Same for audio, or excuse me, same for video. This all works within an app. So you can use your own department. If you have a PC or a mobile device that is of use during your study visit, the ATRU also offers the ability to rent and
$5 and $5 a day fee, an iPad and a stand so that you can take those to your visits where everything is set up and ready to go for you. Very user friendly as far as being able to access the service and to kind of step through those pieces of how to have those conversations. As I mentioned earlier, 240 languages are available for audio. A good number of those most frequently used languages are also available for that video call option. So over 40 of those. And then accessible from a multiple variety of devices. And Freighter also uses this in conjunction with other interpretive avenues for their staff. So this does help spread consistency across our institutions and our research enterprises. For the audio and video call features, there's just a few things I wanted to point out that make this a really ideal situation. And it can be kind of, if you haven't used the system before, it may be a little stressful to think I'm adding in technology into a piece where it would much maybe be preferred in the moment to just speak with someone in the room. But there are some options here. Of course, the on-demand service piece is really a key part of this, that there isn't a need to schedule in advance for the interpretation you're requesting. You can open up the app, you select the language, and you're able to search that language by country. So if there is someone coming from a location with multiple language spoken, or maybe variances within that area, you're able to see that on the screen. The languages are listed both in English and the target language. So again, you can have your participant looking through that as well to see what they may be most comfortable in as far as the service. And then within that video call, especially, I'd like to note this notepad feature. So while you are speaking, as the photo on the screen shows, with an interpreter, they are watching those visual cues as well. If there is a piece where you're saying, I want this to be exceptionally clear, they have the option to bring up a notepad feature and type out those things either in English or in the target language. And so you can see that on the screen. If you're confirming an address, want to make sure that the documentation is correct on how a drug is to be administered at home. Any of those things where that reinforcement would be very helpful. You'd be able to have that notepad feature brought up. Again, with this call and audio feature, really want participants to be comfortable in this space. So audio off, video off are both options. If you are having a conversation and don't want portions of that, while they are alone in a room or something, don't want that to be transmitted, we can turn audio off. If you are having video on and want privacy at a moment, you can turn video off as well. And again, if you are connected with an interpreter, and say the interpreter on the screen is the one you're given, and your participant is saying, no, I'd much rather speak with a male, then you can simply ask and they will immediately direct you to another option within that. So you have a lot of options within it, a lot of leeway as far as the scheduling and the performance within that visit. To reach out to the Research Languages Service Corps, it is available on our CTSI website. This link will give you, bring you to that page, which describes some of those costs associated with use for both written and for interpretation. And you're welcome to reach out to me as well for any quotes or documents that you're interested in having viewed. Any questions?
Do you have specialty department translators? Like, we do a lot of neuropsych testing, and we're looking for somebody who is fluent in Spanish to help administer that. Is that something that you could connect us with?
Yeah, I can look into that. So they do have a wide variety of interpreters. And what they have done is, because this is a nationwide program, working with lawyers, with hospitals, with others, we have specific like medical interpreters as well that are more fluent and not just that conversational Spanish, but can most likely know the vocabulary, know the ins and outs of that particular portion. So I'll check into that for them, especially on the neuro side, and see what's available for you.
That would be great. Thank you.
Anybody else online have any questions? Right in the chat.
Quiet group.
This is going to do very well, both of you. I usually have questions and I have none. Good.
Either we explained it really well, or we've got you so confused.
I think we'll conclude for the day. Join us again next month for some more ancillary services discussions. There'll be 4 different topics, IDS, imaging, the children's research request form. There's one more, I think I'm leaving out. True, of course. Like, I know I was leaving one out. Thank you so much for the comments. And then also, we are planning on sending out a survey to all of our learners from this year, just to help us plan better for next year. I don't think we've ever repeated a topic in the last 3 years, so we'll give you the list of past topics and just ask for suggestions for what you might want to see next year. So look out for that survey. You'll probably get an email from me. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
This is great. Thank you.